Well, hello again, everyone, in
everybody.
the seeing God in the everyday world. We hope you're having a great week. We hope you had a great week from last week.
Yes.
And we are glad to be back 2 weeks in a row, everyone.
All
2 weeks in a row.
right.
We
See,
did
we
it.
can do this.
So we're back, and we have a great show today. We are excited about what we're going to be sharing with you. But we want to jump right into it and say, hi, Becky. How are you?
Hey, babe, I'm great. How are you?
We are good. I'm having a great day. It's been a lot of fun. We got some things done today. We got more car problems and stuff like that. But you know what? That's
No,
just
more car fixes today.
that is true. We
More
did get car
fixes.
fixes, but at least we're overcomers, aren't we? We're overcomers.
Absolutely.
So we wanted to talk a little bit today as we start off our program. Is we want to kind of give a little bit of a COVID update because in the United States there's a lot of positive things happening. We've said before we live in Florida, and Florida's kind of been like what? I mean, we've had some issues, but mostly we've been kind of open through the whole thing, and it's been a good thing and a bad thing. There's been some struggles, but overall we've been pretty much open and stuff. So
We seem to be on that nice downward trend now.
right
Pretty
now,
consistently.
definitely, we are on a downward trend, and things are looking good. People are getting vaccinated, and we're not going to go into that, but people are getting vaccinated. People are, we're kind of reaching that almost tipping point for the herd immunity or whatever it's called. But we still have friends all over the world who are
Yes.
struggling and who are going through this. Matter of fact, I talked to a good pastor friend of mine today who lives out in the mountain region of Kenya up by Uganda. And he said that they are having a lot of trouble right now, that the COVID percentage rate is up to 15%.
Right.
And it's kind of interesting because Kenya has kind of been smooth. They dealt with the lockdowns and everything else, but when it comes to actual people getting COVID, it's been pretty low. So this is a little concerning for them, to start all of a sudden to have the rate go up.
Right.
And so we're a little concerned about them, but we're praying for them. And we also wanted to talk a little bit about our friend Pastor Steve, who is working in the slums. And when we say that, we're not exaggerating. Nairobi, Kenya has 7 of the largest slums in all of the world. And he works right into the middle of that. And from the beginning of this thing, he had on his heart to feed.
Small bit of backstory
Yeah, go
about
ahead.
Pastor
Go
Steve.
ahead.
Pastor Steve and his wife have been feeding the children in the slums on a weekly basis for years.
Yes.
This is their ministry. Their mission is to bring hope and light and Christ into the slums, not to pluck people up out of the slums and put them somewhere else in just as bad condition, but to literally allow the light of Christ to transform the slums. So this is not a new work to him, but is a greatly expanded work because of COVID.
Right. And I have a podcast where I actually did an interview with Pastor Steve back in April or May when this whole thing started.
Right.
And they went from feeding weekly to feeding daily. And they are continuing to do that. And they are feeding over 1,000 people a day.
Right.
And it's been amazing to watch them and the work they're doing, and how they're just their heart and their compassion for the people, to be out there every day. I mean, it's amazing to me because they get up early, they make the food from scratch, and they give it all out, and they're preaching the gospel. He's teaching until the afternoon, late afternoon, and then at night they they have to be in because of curfew and stuff.
Right.
So
And on top of all that, it's providing jobs for some of the local people, and it's a beautiful thing to see.
Yes, it's fantastic, and to see their fearlessness basically in the face of all this, and it's been great because they've done all the protocols. I thought that was one of the
Yes.
most amazing things, and they've listened to what the government has said. They've done all the protocols. They've been healthy through the whole thing. It's just an awesome thing. But we want to continue to bring light to, even though here in the United States it's getting a little bit better, it's getting a lot better here in the States. other places around the world, they're still struggling.
Yeah.
We talked to some of our friends in Ecuador, who actually one of our pastor friends right now does have COVID. We just talked to him over the weekend, and so it's still
Along
here.
with a large percentage of his family.
Yes,
So,
and so it's still here. We're still dealing with it. We're still praying over it and encouraging those who are going through it. But we did want to just make a notion of that, or make a note of that.
and
That
ask you to join us in prayer for them, because sometimes here in the U.S. we do live on a little bit of an island.
we do.
And,
We do.
So
We have it really, really good. And so just wanted to pass that along to you. I wanted to talk a little bit this week, and I wanted to give a testimony of something. And this is kind of so you know those things that you need to do that you never want to do, or you just hate doing. And so this week
I don't
I
have
had
any of those. I
Well,
love doing all my chores. They're
yes.
wonderful.
Yes. Well, here's one of those ones that. So we recently we bought a car, and I wanted to get the car and clean it up and make it really nice and put a nice coat of wax on it. And trust me, I've not waxed a car in a long time. And this car is a little bit bigger than a smaller car that
We're
we
not
have.
tall people. The roof is high.
And yeah, I had to get on a step stool and stuff like that. And so I started doing this, and I started scrubbing this down and scrubbing the car down and really cleaning it, wipe it, and doing all the glass and all the plastic scrap, just scrubbing it and then putting wax on it and waxing it and drying it and all those things that you have to do it. And I realized as I'm standing back and looking at it, just how nice it was. And how nice it was to learn parts of the car that I didn't even know were there. It's like you buy a car, you think you look it over, but until you get underneath, you're on the side of it and you're wiping it down like this, you go, oh, wow, that's that little plastic piece there. That's pretty cool. I didn't even know that was there. I didn't even know that's how the mud flaps were attached on and things like that. Just those silly things. And it made me start to think about something, is that those little things, and a lot of times it's the things we don't want to do, help us see things in a different angle or in a different light, that helps us actually learn more about the thing we have or the thing we're being asked to do. And it made me think about all those times in Scripture where God asks people to do the mundane, the simple things, and how many times we resist that. We resist doing the mundane things.
But I want the big thing.
Yeah,
right?
I want to have my name in lights. I don't want to be the one in the back, making sure the lights actually turn on. But I think that we miss that a little bit. We miss the point of sometimes what God's trying to do with us when we focus on the big things so much that we miss out on the little stuff. And one of the things that really came to my mind was Jesus. Jesus told the disciples, he tells the 72 to go out and preach the gospel, and he gives them little things, and he says, go out here and if they don't receive you, dust your feet off and go to the next one. But if they receive you, stay there and teach them and preach to them and let them know. And they came back, and the thing that they came back with was, even the demons run away from you. We have power over them. And Jesus stops them and says, whoa, wait a second. Be happy that your name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life. It's the salvation was the important thing, and that you are spreading the salvation, and you are spreading about the kingdom of heaven, not so much making demons run away, not so much having dominion over them. That was not the important thing. The important thing was being able to share about the kingdom and the kingdom of heaven. So that was kind of my neat testimony this week that I thought was kind of cool. And I wanted to share with you because I just felt like, you know what? I think all of us get stuck in the mundane things, and we get exhausted. When doing the everyday things, when
Right.
we actually, the everyday things are very important. The everyday things are the things that God's actually trying to teach us to get us prepared for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, because it's in those little things that we build trust, we build faith, we build endurance, we build all those things for when it's time for our name to be in lights. If
If
that time
it's time.
ever comes, we're prepared for it and we're ready for it. So just wanted to share that with you this week and want to encourage you seeing God in waxing and washing the car, and sweating in Florida, because it's already hot and 80, what was it, 84 degrees, I think it was over the
It was
weekend.
beautiful.
And it was already nice and warm to go in our nice spring day. So wanted to just share that with you.
Okay, so one of the things that excites us so much when we get into Bible study is seeing how the entirety of Scripture works together. Everything in the Old Testament relates to everything in the New Testament. All of it is the overarching story of God's redemption of mankind, his great love for us, and everything in the Old Testament points to Jesus Christ. We're coming into a season of year now. We're about to celebrate the Passover. We're about to celebrate the resurrection. So we're going to take the next couple of weeks and kind of tie those things together, show you how the Old Testament ties to the New Testament, through the Passover into the crucifixion and the resurrection. We're going to show you that repetitive story that God keeps telling us through his word of his constant draw of us to himself. And we're going to start off looking at the Israelites, where they were and how they ended up needing to be saved in the first place.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. When you read the Old Testament, there is a lot of stuff that kind of bogs you down and it kind of gets confusing. Just Leviticus. And there are those things, though, that when you read them, you go, wow, because there's so many, going back to the nuanced things, the little things, there are so many little things and little nuggets that's in the Old Testament that helps explain the New Testament, and then even explains us and where we're at today. And it's just so cool. So we want to talk about all the way back. We're going to go all the way back to Genesis.
Take us back.
That's right. We're going back. We're going back to Genesis. And first of all, I wanted to talk about how did we even get Israel? Okay. So you have, Adam and Eve. So going all the way back, but we're not going to go that far back. Let's go back to around Genesis chapter 35. And you have Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Jacob is now becoming the main player, obviously, in what's happening. And there's a situation in chapter 35 where God is talking to Jacob. And he says this in verse 10. He says, "And God said to him, 'Your name is Jacob. No longer shall it be called Jacob.'" That'd be kind of interesting, going, hey, your name is... Oh, wait, no longer. It's that. But it's going to be called Israel. And Israel shall be your name. So he called him Israel. And then God said, "I am the God Almighty." And he tells him to be fruitful, multiply, and a company of nations shall come from you, and kings shall come from your body, and all these cool, awesome things will happen. But that's where we get Israel from. It's Jacob, when God changed Jacob's name to Israel. So now we know, as we fast forward just a couple chapters here, we're going to fast forward to chapter 37. You now have Jacob, or Israel, who has all these kids. And we now have the 12 sons of Israel, which we all know now as the 12 tribes. So, out of the 12 tribes, we have one of them that is called Joseph. His name is Joseph. Now, Joseph was very cool because he spoke and he lived his life in Technicolor.
I think that was artistic license.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, so Joseph was really loved by his dad, and his dad gave him a cool coat, and Joseph was blessed by God because he had dreams and visions. And one day he kind of told this vision to his brothers, and it kind of ticked his brothers off because basically Joseph was like, oh, he was the daddy's boy, and now he's like giving this vision that he's going to rule over all of them. And yeah, that didn't go over very well.
Sibling rivalry right
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
I can just imagine. I mean, we have 3 boys and a girl, and I can just imagine 12. Yeah, no, that would have been, especially if one of them's standing up in front of everybody and saying, "Hey, God gave me a vision that y'all are gonna be bowing down to me," and so, needless to say,
Little bit of jealousy.
the brothers didn't like that, so they kind of threw him in a pit. And they were like, what are we going to do with this kid? I mean, if we kill him, then his blood's on our hands. And, geez, nobody wants that. We don't want to deal with that. Plus, who's going to tell Dad? Dad's going to, we don't want to be doing that. So what they do is they have this great idea, this visionary thing idea. They're like, let's sell him to slavery. Yeah, we'll sell him these people coming by, we'll just sell it to them and they'll take him away, and then we'll make up a story that is he got attacked and then he died, and that Technicolor Dreamcoat, they cover it with blood and they give it to his dad, and his dad's like, yeah, that's his coat, and yeah, that's bad. So Joseph is now in Egypt, and he's now under the servitude of Potiphar, a guy who owns some land, and Joseph is kind of helping out with the land. Well, some bad things happen. Joseph makes a stand basically for righteousness. We're not going to go in the whole story, but makes a stand for righteousness, and he ends up getting thrown in jail. Well, now in jail, God's given him these visions still, and he's interpreting dreams for people. Well, guess what? Pharaoh over Egypt has a nightmare, has a horrible dream, and a guy knows that Joseph interprets dreams and says, hey, Joseph will interpret your dream. And sure enough, now Joseph is now elevated outside of prison, and he's now the right-hand man of the Pharaoh. And I'm going over a lot of this really fast and really broad. Read Genesis. Go through it's a good story. It's not like some of the, like I said, Leviticus, and some of this is a story that's linear, and actually you can follow along very easy. But basically, Joseph, as you go through in Genesis chapter 41, is interpreting the Pharaoh's dreams, and he gets lifted up out of prison, and it becomes basically the right-hand man. Now, make a story longer and longer, is that Joseph then has a vision of what's happening and what's going to happen, and that a great famine is going to come over the land, and how Pharaoh needs to prepare for the famine. Well, exactly as Joseph said was going to happen is what happens. Well, Joseph's brothers are dealing with the famine as well. They're hurting, and they're looking for food. And they go, wait a second, we hear that Egypt has food. So let's go to Egypt and find out if we can get food. So they go to Egypt and they get food. Well, they come back, and Israel, the father, goes, wait a second, why don't we go again? And why don't we have more food? Why don't we just buy more food from them since they've got it? And what happens is then Joseph actually reveals himself. He kind of does a fun thing. You need to read it. It's hilarious how he kind of teases his brothers, and they realize, oh my goodness, the vision you had before we threw you in the pit is now coming true. And Joseph then allows his brothers to go back and get his father, and the entire family comes and stays in Egypt. Now, Israel, as God said, a nation will be birthed out of you. You will have children. You will be fruitful and multiply. And clearly they fruitfuled and multiplied because they become a full nation under Egypt and in the nation of Egypt. And that's where Becky's going to take over because she's got the next part of the story because the rest of the story, I guess we'll say.
So we've got this great setup already. You're already seeing a picture of from slavery to salvation, right? For both Joseph, he was sold into slavery and was brought to salvation up into Pharaoh's house, and then his entire family was in famine and want, and is now brought to salvation in the house of Egypt. So after all of this wonderful salvation, and we've got a victory here, and we're going to tie a bow on this story and make it a happy ending, right? So why do we know all this stuff about the Israelites being in slavery in Egypt? Why did that happen? Well, that happens in Exodus chapter 1. Have you ever had a thing happen where there's a change in administration over you, maybe at a job or whatever, and they have no idea what went before, and everything changes and it's worse than it was before? This is what happens. Mm-hmm. So the old Pharaoh who knew Joseph and who Joseph meant something to died. So he didn't know Joseph. He didn't care what Joseph had done to rescue the nation. All he knew was that Joseph and his family over here was getting really, really big.
Yes.
And that was becoming a real threat to his power. So he decided that the best way to handle people who were growing in power within the borders of his nation was to squash them pretty quick. So he ordered that those of Israel's house would be brought into slavery. And he set taskmasters over them, harsh taskmasters, and he set them to hard labor. And he ordered the midwives that as they were delivering Hebrew babies, that if those babies were boys, that they be killed on the spot. So it was a terrible, terrible time. Now, one bright spot in that is that those same midwives, they feared God because, see, just because the new Pharaoh didn't know Joseph or what his God had done, the people who had been living there through all that, they knew.
Right.
So these midwives, they honored the Hebrew women, and they would come back and he would go, why am I seeing little baby Hebrew boys running around? I told you how to take care of this. And the midwives were like, well, you just don't know these Hebrew women. They give birth so fast. I mean, by the time we get there, there's nothing we can do. So they were protecting all of these little babies. So the Pharaoh was not pleased with this. And so he doubled down on his orders.
Yes.
And he said, okay, fine. Forget it. We're going to have every single son that the Hebrews give birth to, every one of them, I want them thrown in the Nile. I don't care if they make it through the whole birthing process and the midwives can't get to them. They're born, they're male, they go in the Nile. I am not going to have this. I'm not going to have my power, wrestled from me. So, into this, it's been a roller coaster ride. Yeah, we've got great favor, and then we've got being thrown into a pit, and then we've got great favor in Potiphar's house, and then we get thrown into jail, and then we, it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride. We've got great favor, and now every baby boy is being killed. Okay. Exodus chapter 2. I love this verse because this is one of those places where you find God using those little details. Remember Dan talked about those little details earlier? He uses one of those tiny little details to tie the Old Testament story to the New Testament revelation of Christ. It says, now a man from the house of Levi went and took as his wife a Levite woman. Okay? The house of Levi, this was the priestly house.
Yes.
Okay? Any children born to this family are by birthright priests.
Yes.
Okay? Keep that little nuance in mind. The woman conceived, and she bore a son. And when she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But if any of y'all have had a 3-month-old child around, you know the time for hiding this kid is running out. Okay, they squall, they squeal. 3 months, we're starting to get mobile. We're rolling over. We're crawling around. We're getting out of mama's hands. Okay, so
And louder, and getting much louder.
louder, definitely louder. Okay, so she hid him for 3 months, and when she realized that she could no longer hide him, she made a basket for him, and she did the technical rule of the law, right? She put him in the Nile.
Oh, yeah.
She just protected him really, really well before she did it. And she put him in this basket, and she covered him over, and she entrusted him to God, and she set him into the river. Well, we know the story. He drifts downriver, gets caught up in some bulrushes, right, where the princess is bathing. And she has the child brought to her, and she knows this is a Hebrew child. Okay, she knows. And she says, no, I'm going to keep this child. Well, this is a princess, right?
Mm-hmm.
Any of you daddies have daughters? When your daughter wants to bring home the orphaned kitten or puppy dog or whatever she found.
Or the goldfish.
Or the goldfish. We're not even going to talk about goldfish. Y'all, we have a 5-year-old goldfish that should have died in 6 months' time. But that's neither here nor there.
Curse you, carnival goldfish.
So the princess brings this baby home and protects it and goes so far as to go ask for a Hebrew nurse to help bring it up. And of course, God's awesome in his details, and he makes sure that it's Moses' mother that gets to come to the palace, nurture him, raise him, and train him
Yep.
as a Hebrew child and in the palace of the Egyptians.
Yep.
Okay, so are we seeing we're seeing parallels again, yeah?
Yeah.
Of those that rise back up to blessing. God is setting up a salvation story here for his people who are being brutalized and enslaved. So Moses grows up in the palace. He knows all of the favor of the palace. He also knows the Hebrews. He knows he's one of them. So things transpire, and he kills an Egyptian for beating a Hebrew slave. And then he flees because Pharaoh has put up with his presence in the palace to this point, in respect for his daughter and all. But now, no, you've just killed an Egyptian, and we're not playing anymore. So Moses flees, and Pharaoh orders his execution.
Right. And Moses is a grown man at this time.
Right. He has grown up.
He's not like a child who made a mistake or whatever.
No.
He chose this.
Right.
He's a grown man.
He saw an injustice, and then he acted.
Yes.
So Moses is in exile. And here's another one of those beautiful little nuances. So over in chapter 2, verse 16, when Moses flees, he flees to the land of Midian. Okay? So it says, now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs of water for their father's flock. So what kind of family is this again? This is a priestly family, okay? This priestly line is going to be maintained. So Moses marries one of the daughters of this house and lives in Midian as an exiled priest of the Hebrew nation. And those little connecting verses, chapter 3, verse 23, it says, during those many days, okay, Moses is serving as a shepherd of his father-in-law's flocks. He's raising a family of his own. And it says, during those many days, the king of Egypt died. And the people of Egypt groaned because of their slavery and cried out for help. Their cry for rescue from slavery came up before God. Y'all, I want you to see this because this becomes that perpetual story that God shows us over and over and over again about his heart. He hears the cries of his people. And it doesn't matter if you're in one of the high parts of the story or one of the low parts of the story. You are his. And he hears you. And he is always, always, always working to bring you back to salvation. So where we're going to end, we're going to set up the cliffhanger for what happens next week, right?
That's right.
Everybody loves a good cliffhanger. In Exodus 3, okay, verses 7 through 10, that's where we all know the story. Moses is out there tending the flocks, and an angel of the Lord appears to him in a burning bush.
Yep.
And he decides he's going to go over and check it out. Okay, clearly not a cowardly man. Okay. So he goes over to the bush, and the voice of the Lord speaks to him, and the Lord says to him that he has heard the cries of his people, and he cares.
Yep.
And he's not going to just leave them in their slavery. That he has been reminded of his promises, and he's going to act. And you know what? Moses, from the priestly line, who has the birthright to speak on behalf of the Lord, I'm going to send you, and I'm going to use you. So in that moment, God not only sets in motion a plan of salvation for his people, but he sets in motion the restoration of Moses to his nation.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's just so much cool stuff
there really is.
That's in this. And again, like I said, if you haven't read the Old Testament or really gotten into the Old Testament a lot because you're afraid, and a lot of people are afraid of the Old Testament, this whole section from the midpoint to end of Genesis into Exodus, it reads more like a novel. It's very
there's
telling
character
the story.
Development and action and adventure. It's all there.
It's like everything you would want to see in a movie or in a good novel. I encourage you to read it and to be a part of it. And so we're going to leave it there. And next week we're going to pick up. We're going to talk about the plagues. And we're going to go in depth of the Passover and what the Passover is and all the cool stuff around the Passover, as we are just a week away from Passover.
Right. The Passover is the 27th of this month.
So this is going to be an awesome time. So that's going to do it this week for Seeing God in the Everyday. Guys, thank you so much. We love doing this, and we are hoping you're having a good time listening and enjoying with us. If you're liking what you're hearing and watching, please like and subscribe to the podcast or to the video podcast, I guess, on YouTube. Leave us notes, leave us messages. We want to hear from you. Again, we're not just doing this just to spew stuff. We want to build a community of people who see God in their everyday, because I think there's so much that we miss when we're not looking for him. So I want to open that up so that we're looking for God in our everyday thing, in our everyday lives.
And before next week, if you want to read ahead and get ahead of us, pick up Exodus.
Yeah.
You'll get there.
Yeah, start in chapter 2, and you'll catch up and be right where we are. So, guys, thank you so much. We love you guys, and continue to look at those things around you, to open your eyes and see God in your everyday. Okay? God bless you guys.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.